Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special Vote 2022 election edition of Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Halleck. Up top this week, we sit down with the two candidates running for the North Country seat in Congress. The newly drawn New York 21 district has now grown to cover 15 counties from the Canadian border and much of the Adirondacks all the way south to the Catskills. Four-term U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik is being challenged by political newcomer Matt Castelli. And Matt Castelli joins us now. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Tom. Good to see you, too.
This is your first run for office. So why run for Congress?
I think we are certainly on the wrong track as a nation and within our district, and we need a change. And we need someone, a moderate, who can bring us together to start solving problems rather than creating problems. One of the challenges that I've heard consistently as I drive throughout the 15 counties that make up New York 21 and talk with voters is their concern with our incumbent Congresswoman, Elise Stefanik. She's someone who has sold us out, really to focus on advancing her own career at the expense of our district, and certainly at the expense of our country. One of the concerns that I've heard from folks is that Congresswoman Stefanik has been perpetrating a massive fraud. She is someone that has falsely claimed credit for results and funding for our district despite voting against it. During her record of the last 8 years in Congress, she's only passed 2 bills into law, the commemorative coin and the renaming of a post office. That's it. And time again in Washington, D.C., she's been selling us out. She sold out veterans by voting against veterans' health care benefits like the PACT Act. She sold out women by voting against efforts to make access to contraception more widely available. She's certainly pushing forward a national ban on abortion. She sold out seniors by voting against efforts to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. And she's made this plan to gut Medicare and Social Security. She certainly sold out her democracy on January 6th, which was a compelling event for me to enter into this race. And I think she has sold out her democracy time and time again by defending the actions related to January 6th. So Congresswoman Stefanik has sold us out, and as a result of that, she's a dangerous individual for our country and our community because she's willing to sell out anyone in order to advance her own career.
And I'll ask you more about some of her specific votes and about January 6th, but why are you running here in the North Country and the 21st District?
Yeah, so I live in Glens Falls, and we need a representative who's going to really focus on our future rather than their own. I'm an upstate New York guy, born and raised, was born into a bipartisan household. My dad's a Democrat, mom's a Republican, and for much of my life, I was an independent. I went to Siena College, not too far away from the district, and it was 21 years ago when 9/11 happened, put me on a path to serve my country, served at the CIA for nearly 15 years, doing counterterrorism work, leading teams hunting down some of the world's most dangerous terrorists. I served in Afghanistan, Iraq, had an experience in serving at the White House, first in the Obama, then Trump White House, because I believe when it comes to our safety, security, and strength, it requires us to put country before party. Did some work in the healthcare setting after COVID hit, and then when January 6th happened, it compelled me to jump into this race. But I returned to upstate New York to make a second phase of life, and I'm excited for the opportunity to represent our community.
And you talk about being an upstate guy. Your opponent, the Congresswoman, is calling you a carpetbagger, saying that you moved here to the North Country just to run for Congress.
Yeah, no, I'm an upstate New York guy, born and raised in upstate New York. Listen, I went to Stewart's for ice cream after each one of my Little League games, went to college in upstate New York, served my country, and then returned to upstate New York after my career of service. And if Congresswoman Stefanik's position is that folks who have served their country are not welcome here, well, I think that's another reason why we're going to win on November 8th.
You have said that it was January 6th, the attack on the U.S. Capitol, that prompted you to run. How so?
Well, listen, I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And on that day, we saw folks like Congresswoman Stefanik violate their oath to the Constitution. She was a party to what was a criminal conspiracy, as we now learn more and more information from the January 6 hearings, to overthrow our government, to overturn the will of the people, our vote. This is anathema to what we stand for as a democracy. She turned her back on our country and I think sold out our democracy. And she's continued to defend those participants, violent insurrectionists, who launched what was the worst assault against law enforcement in our nation's history. 5 cops died in the aftermath of January 6th, and over 140 were seriously injured. And so this is a compelling event that requires us to have transparency and accountability and justice in order to prevent it from ever happening again. Because until we do, this threat to our democracy will endure, a democracy that I swore an oath to protect and defend.
We were at a candidates forum a few nights ago, and someone asked you if you thought the majority of the people who took part in the rampage were exercising their right to protest the results of the presidential election and that things got out of hand, or if you view them all as insurrectionists.
Well, listen, anyone who participated in violent activity that day, who attempted to overthrow our democracy, who attempted to enter into the Capitol building, who assaulted cops, who attempted and pledged to hang Mike Pence or launch some sort of violent attack against other lawmakers in order to prevent the certification of the 2020 election, that by definition is a violent insurrection. There were certainly folks who showed up to express their First Amendment rights, and so long as those individuals did not participate in violence that day, they're protected. They're folks who certainly were protected by the First Amendment to gather and to protest. But what we saw, and we're starting to see certainly with the January 6 hearings, is that there were efforts to galvanize folks there to violence. There were efforts by the part of former administration officials. We're starting to see real insight into a criminal conspiracy designed to overturn the will of the people and to overthrow our government.
Congresswoman Stefanik easily won this seat with nearly 60% of the vote 2 years ago, and she has become a very powerful Republican in Washington now, the House Conference Chair, third highest ranking Republican in the U.S. House. Political analysts across the board are predicting that the 21st District will stay Republican, so why take her on?
Yeah, we've got a great opportunity because we're building a coalition. Stefanik, in this exact cycle, has pivoted way to the far right, and that's way out of step with the moderate values of our district. Folks are looking for a unifier, someone who's going to bring us together to solve problems and not create more of them. And what they've seen is that as Congresswoman Stefanik has risen through the ranks, the results for our district have been reduced. Her bipartisanship has gone down. Her score is atrocious at this point. And she's focused on grievance politics that divide our country. We want someone who's going to deliver real results and focus on our future rather than their own. So while Congresswoman Stefanik has done a good job in advancing her own career and her future, she's done a terrible job in advancing our careers and our future. We need a representative who can bring us together. And I'm encouraged and proud of the strong support we're receiving from Democrats, Independents, and Republicans.
She did win praise earlier on in her career for being a moderate, for standing up to fellow Republicans, including Donald Trump. In more recent years, she has been much more in line, in step with the former president, calling herself ultra MAGA. She says her position now as Conference House Chair, benefits her constituents here in the 21st District. But you think she has become far too focused on her own career and has become far too partisan?
Absolutely. And her record of results is proof. She hasn't done anything. She's only gotten 2 bills passed into law, that commemorative coin and the renaming of a post office, throughout her 8 years in Congress. Her position as conference chair is really just a reflection of her advancement of her career. The dollars she's brought back to this district have come despite her because she voted against those. We call this the Stefanik scam, where she falsely attempts to claim credit for results and funding despite voting against those things. And when we look at what her plans are for the future, if she were to continue in office, her efforts would gut our economy. It would destroy our economy because we can assume that the things she's voted against, she would continue to cut in Washington. Her focus right now from an economic perspective would be disastrous for our community. It would result in police officers and nurses losing their jobs. It would result in the loss and cutting of rural healthcare services. It would result in the rising costs of childcare and housing. Certainly seniors are going to see Social Security and Medicare impacted because she's promising to cut those as well. So her pledge for the future in order to advance her career comes at the expense of our economic security and certainly our safety and security.
The makeup of the 21st District has changed with redistricting. The newly drawn district now made up of 15 counties, including Montgomery, Schoharie counties, Rensselaer County, Fulton, Watertown, no longer part of the 21st. Half of Jefferson County was removed. But bottom line, it is still a district with the Republicans having a significant voter enrollment advantage. So after redistricting, how are you going to appeal to win over those critical Republicans that you have to win over and those independents?
We've been doing it from the start of this campaign. It's about showing up. Folks want a representative who's going to show up and lift up their voices, to hear them, to engage with them. And we've been doing that from the start of this campaign. Folks have heard from me when I show up in all 15 counties. We've been having town hall events in each county of the district where we create an opportunity for folks to gather together. This is what our democracy is based on, creating a space and a venue for dialogue to actually do some problem solving. And what I consistently hear is that it's been quite some time since Congresswoman Stefanik showed up in the community to talk directly with all voters. She doesn't do that. She hasn't done it in quite some time. So they know that I'm always going to show up, not just when campaigning, but to deliver real results and real representation for our district. The other thing that I've heard pretty consistently is that there are many Republicans that right now don't feel like they have a home in Congresswoman Stefanik's ultra-MAGA wing of the Republican Party. As I mentioned, my mother's a Republican. She points to people like Elise Stefanik and says, that's not my Republican Party. So there's a sense of homelessness for many Republicans, many independents. We have a home in our campaign for all of them. I'm not just running as the Democratic candidate, I'm running as the moderate party candidate. And it's a space for us to truly build a coalition, not just to win an election, but to govern more effectively. Because we can govern more effectively from the middle out, and that's the coalition that we're building.
Many voters say the most pressing, most important issue for them this election is the economy.
Yeah.
Inflation at a 40-year high, prices up on just about everything, gas, the grocery store, a huge jump anticipated in heating costs this winter. You can look at Canada, Great Britain, and say it's happening globally and blame the war in Ukraine and supply chain issues. Here in the U.S., though, how much of this do you blame on President Biden and the Democrats controlling Congress? Was the administration and Congress too slow in addressing the dramatic rise in inflation?
Yes, I'll say that very distinctly and categorically, that they were too slow in recognizing that inflation was a real thing, it wasn't transitory, and they didn't take action to stop it more quickly. And true to form, I'm always going to be willing to call out members of my own party. I think we need a lot more of that in Washington, D.C. But as you pointed out, the inflation and the challenges that we're facing are global in nature. And what we hear from folks like Congresswoman Stefanik is a misdiagnosis of the problem for political purposes. The challenges we're facing are an imbalance of supply and demand. And we have real solutions that can help reduce costs for working families and seniors. Congresswoman Stefanik, unfortunately, has opposed each one of them because she thinks it benefits her politically. And as we were just discussing, her plan for the economy is to cut spending, which would have a disastrous impact on our district, on jobs, on healthcare access, on seniors. That's her plan because she thinks that that'll benefit her in 2024 as well. We need an opportunity to really reduce costs for working families. And we're focused on childcare, elder care, housing, healthcare and prescription drugs. We can do that to give working families and seniors a break. Those are the areas where we can focus on. We can also make sure that we're fighting, because we've seen this certainly with the impact of fuel prices on everything with rising costs, to push back against big oil and OPEC and the monopoly that they've had. We need to make sure that they're not holding us hostage and raking in record profits while we're paying the pain at the pump. Someone needs to confront them. And I would like to see more from this administration in bringing big oil executives to outline their plan for increasing production over the short term. But the reason why we're held hostage right now to increasing fuel prices is because we haven't diversified our energy economy. We need someone who's going to fight to make sure that we've got alternatives that can really reduce the cost of energy sources for our home heating and for transportation.
Crime is up dramatically in many areas of the country. What do you do about the increase in gun violence in particular?
Yeah, so we certainly want to make sure we're fully funding our law enforcement. I've worked with law enforcement throughout my entire career. I will always have their back. Unfortunately, Congresswoman Stefanik is willing to stab law enforcement in the back when it suits her political career. And she's actually opposed. She's the only candidate in this race who has voted to defund the police. So we want to make sure that our police have the faith, trust, and resources to do the job of protecting our local communities. But you outlined gun violence, which we've now seen become the #1 killer of children in this country. It is an urgent and immediate threat. Now, I'm a gun owner myself, strong supporter of the Second Amendment. We can come together as a community to respect the rights of law-abiding gun owners while also reducing the rates of gun violence by focusing on common sense solutions. I'm a moderate. I'm someone who believes that we can solve problems from the middle. We just need people willing to bring us together to do that. And common sense solutions around universal background checks and supporting our law enforcement with the tools to keep firearms out of the hands of those who are going to do harm to themselves or to others, that's where we can focus on.
Now, she'll say you support a gun ban.
I do not. Categorically, I do not. I've said it multiple times.
What about a ban on assault weapons?
I do not support a ban on assault weapons. In large part because I don't believe it achieves the objective. Right now, we need to reduce the rates of gun violence in our community by focusing on common sense solutions that we can bring a coalition to bear by bringing together law-abiding gun owners like myself, those of us who support the Second Amendment, and those who want to keep their kids and communities safe. We can achieve it. But so long as folks like Congresswoman Stefanik are trying to divide that coalition for their own personal benefit and their campaign contributions and re-election prospects, we're never going to be in a position to keep our kids safe.
After the landmark Supreme Court ruling this summer that overturned Roe v. Wade, should Congress now take steps to pass a federal law to legalize abortion rights?
Absolutely, and I will fully support that. Women deserve the right to be in control of their own bodies and make their own healthcare decisions without interference from the government.
Is there a crisis at the southern border? There is certainly a lot of criticism of President Biden's immigration and border security policies, rightly so?
Well, I think that there's a lot of confusion, and perhaps there is a crisis at the southern border. I do not believe and have confidence that our southern border is secure. And I'm a former national security professional. I believe in border security because that is national security. But I also believe that we can't trust politicians of either party to give us an honest assessment because they're using it for political purposes. Congresswoman Stefanik, chief in point, she is someone that in 2017 opposed Donald Trump's funding for a border wall and is now speaking a different tune because she blows whichever way the political wind does. It's all about politics for her. It's not about problem solving. In my estimation, we can't trust either political party to give us an honest assessment about the security of our border and how to solve that problem. I would like to take it out of the hands of politicians. One of the things that I'm proposing is establishing an independent bipartisan commission to give the American people the full trust and confidence of an assessment about where are there gaps in our border security, particularly at the southern border. Where are there opportunities to fill those gaps and to make recommendations for that. Once we have that honest assessment, then we can move forward with once and for all securing our southern border.
Matt Castelli, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tom.